You can tell by the state of this sign that this hasn't been U.S. military housing in a long time.
These homes were deemed surplus housing for the Navy.
Officers Row is under renovation. At the peak of Magnolia's Discovery Park, we're taking a sneak peek at 12 duplexes and a house that go on sale to the public in the summer of 2016.
In terms of home ownership surrounded by a park, I don't know of another example.
Come on, buddy.
A quick stroll from Officers Row, Gary Blakesley and his business partners have finished renovating 12 smaller colonial revival duplexes and a house.
So we looked at them, and then literally 30 minutes later, we made an offer.
Just really the mix of the modern convenience, but still really holding on to that traditional historic aspect of the home we loved. We've seen a few history books of Fort Lawton as it was being built, and we think that this was the first home, but it's hard to tell in the old photos.
Meredith and Ian Waymeyer are just meeting their new neighbors.
We have people that did 4 tours down in Antarctica as wildlife biologists. There's a teacher and a firefighter.
They are a diverse group, but they do have some commonalities. They do appreciate history in general.
This is a watercolor of the Great Seattle Fire. So that'll hang in here.
We know that it was a non-commissioned officer's home.
The U.S. Defense Department began developing Fort Lawton, now called Discovery Park, in the late 1800s, in large part for its strategic views of Puget Sound.
I mean, there were 40,000 people stationed here in World War II.
Learning the military history has been fascinating. Learning about some of the unrest and riots during World War II. It was a prisoner of war camp.
A German and an Italian POW from World War II are buried in Fort Lawton Cemetery, where many graves date back to the early 1900s.
The park is named after George Vancouver's ship, the Discovery. The Native Americans used West Point as an encampment for a very long time. A lot of artifacts were discovered there.
In 1970, as the U.S. military contemplated giving much of Fort Lawton to the city of Seattle, a movement began demanding that any land declared military surplus be formally transferred to local tribes. 20 acres are now leased to the Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center, which opened in 1977. A love of the park's history is one commonality of new homeowners here. So is a long history with the park.
2 of them have been married in the park.
So my grandpa owned an engineering firm just outside of the park, and so he and I would go on walks through the park when I was young.
Now, Ian and Meredith are expecting their first child.
The west facing is our room, which looks out to the park, and this one, the east facing room, will be the baby's room.
But it's not all babies' rooms and beautiful vistas.
The caveat with having the original windows, they don't open all the time, but I think as they get more love, they will open normally.
The 26 homes are considered historic Seattle homes, so you'd also better be a fan of butter yellow and brick. Very few exterior changes are allowed.
They can't install a swimming pool. They can't install a big outbuilding or their own private fire pit. They can't do a big garden of their own. The plantings need to be consistent with the overall Discovery Park landscape guidelines.
And there's this.
So the one odd thing here is you do have this giant, what almost looks like a UFO has landed here in your front yard, or they're waiting.
The golf ball.
The golf ball?
Yeah.
And what is it?
It's an FAA air traffic control tower.
But be willing to live with the golf ball, homeowners' dues, and potentially hundreds of people in your front yard on nice days, and you could have this.
It's about a 180-degree panorama view of Puget Sound facing west. So if you're a little bit tall like I am, you can stand at the window and see the water from the basement.
All the people that have lived here and everything that's happened in, over 100 years since 1900, the stories that this place could tell.